Okay, so thank you everyone for being here. So this is today's last session. This is titled Involving Young Professionals. My name is Omar. I'm a PhD student in medical physics at Toronto Metropolitan University, and I'm one of the co-chairs for this panel. And along with me, we have Mike Boyd, who is recently retired from the US EPA. And
yeah, full disclosure, I'm not a young professional.
And so for this session, we have a real all-star lineup of young professionals, a real who's who in the industry of young people who are really making their mark in radiation protection. So we're looking forward to hearing from them. Starting from the right, we have Julie LeBlanc, and then we have Sylvain Andres, Lauren Faulkner, Anthony Davila, and Marta Kotsemba. So first off, we're going to start with Julie, who's going to give a talk titled Experiences of One Mentee, the ICRP Mentorship Program and Beyond. Julie holds a BSc and PhD in biochemistry. She is the Women in STEM Special Advisor at the CNSC, and she's also a member of the OECD and NEA's high-level group on low-dose research. So please give it up for Julie LeBlanc.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's get into this. I only have 11 minutes. Okay, so a bit of introduction. As I said, my name is Julie. I am a wife, a mother of two. My hobbies typically consist of animals and plants. But professionally, as my introduction said, I have a PhD in biochemistry I received in 2014. And then I went on to begin work at the CNSC, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, in 2015. And this was through their new grad program, and I was so my work has continued there as a radiation and health sciences officer, as well as a Women in STEM Special Advisor. So as a lot of us do, I had children during this journey, and so obviously this does cause some delays in someone's career. So I don't think I would necessarily call myself a young professional, so the gray hairs are betraying me a little bit. And I think that that's a point that I'd like to make today, is that often when we do design or create programs to enrich someone's career, we tend to focus on young professionals. And so sometimes we may be excluding those that may not identify as young. And that's, I think, especially true for women. But I think for the ICRP, in the case of the mentorship program, they've done a good job at being inclusive. So their mentorship program does engage with university students, but they also engage with early career scientists and scientists alike. So how I got here. So if I looked at my journey, I could identify several facets that are very important. I don't want to underestimate any of these, but today I will be focusing on collaboration and mentorship. So mentorship, for me, my mentors, I've been formally and informally mentored, but they have guided me, they've empowered me, they've also pushed me outside my comfort zone. And this allowed me to experience or to live key formative experiences that I will never forget. So the ICRP mentorship program was launched in 2019, and as I mentioned previously, it engages with university students, early career scientists and scientists in task groups, and they are mentored by ICRP members. So when I look at my experience with the mentorship program, I can see value for both the task groups and the mentees. So for the task groups, they have additional resources to conduct their work, obviously. They get to broaden their global representation. They get to pass down their knowledge and experience with the ICRP, which I think is key. And as my mentor, Simon Buffler, has informed me, mentees bring enthusiasm to the task groups. For mentees, in my opinion, one important point is that we are considered task group members, and that's key. So that means that we get to play a role, even though it may be small, in informing future ICRP recommendations. But we also get to collaborate on an international scale and network with world experts and our fellow mentees. So my day-to-day experience with the program has been very flexible. Simon has been very accommodating and understanding of competing priorities. We all have full-time jobs, and in addition to the work that we have to do under the program. The ICRP program also enables us to provide an annual report, so obviously tracking our progress on our work, but also providing input into the program. And the ICRP has been really good at addressing this feedback, so we've begun meeting as mentees with ICRP members, and we discuss various topics. The ICRP has also been very welcoming of mentees at various ICRP meetings, so they're just adding that additional experience on how the ICRP works. So I am part of the ICRP Task Group 111, Factors Governing the Individual Response of Humans to Ionizing Radiation, and as the name suggests, this group is responsible for creating a report that basically gathers the current evidence on this topic. And as you know, the annual dose limit for occupational exposures does not distinguish between individual characteristics such as age and sex. But then this is just so we can create a practical system of radiological protection. But sometimes this approach can be simplistic, and that can be the case, for example, for individualized medicine as well as space exploration. There's also been some evidence, so sensitivity analyses on developments that could improve the calculation of detriment has been conducted by the ICRP. And that study had shown that sex does have an impact on that estimate. And so it's important to continue to evaluate the evidence on individual responses to radiation, and in the case of the task that I'm responsible for, looking into how sex modifies radiation-induced health effects. So the task itself is a systematic review on how does biological sex induce radiation, how does biological sex modify radiation-induced health effects? And we're currently in the stage of data extraction. And so this has been a huge undertaking where we started with about 13,000 studies, and we've dwindled that down to about 389. So you can probably appreciate the time that takes. So we've used some software as well as AI tools to help us streamline this task. And so I encourage you to look up our protocol, which is published in the Prospero registry for more information. So I'll just bring it back now to a collaboration and mentorship. So this systematic review is the first of its kind for the CNSC, so we're extremely proud of that. This systematic review is a collaboration between the CNSC and the ICRP. It has produced multidisciplinary team collaboration within the CNSC. It has brought on students as well, and they have in turn experienced mentorship from CNSC staff, and has also allowed CNSC staff to provide mentorship. And so this task, although it's, yes, maybe informing future recommendations, the evolution of radiation protection standards is also having an impact on mine and other careers. So what I have not mentioned about the systematic review, it's building capacity within our organization and within our internal programs. And so it's not only building capacity there, but it's also allowing us to work on different facets within the radiation protection community. And so if you allow me really quickly to plug in some other work that I'm involved in. So systematic reviews can help build AOPs, adverse outcome pathways. And the adverse outcome pathway is a collaborative tool that can facilitate access to and understanding of complex data for risk assessors and decision makers. And it's essentially a hypothetical toxicity pathway that begins with a molecular initiating event, ends with an adverse outcome. These are linked by key events and key event relationships that are supported by empirical data. And so under the NEA, the Nuclear Energy Agency, and through the support of COHERE, our low-dose program, the CNSC led a Horizon-style exercise, essentially assessing the challenges of using AOPs within the radiation protection community. The objective of this exercise was essentially to gather ideas from a wide range of experts across the world to create a set list of priority questions that, if answered, may better describe the radiation dose response, as well as reduce uncertainties in health risks. And so, again, tying it back to collaboration and mentorship, this project was a huge collaborative undertaking. I've learned a lot. I've learned some challenges facing the RP community, as well as the need for a well-networked international radiation protection community that works well together, because if it wasn't for that, these types of exercises would not be possible. And so when I take a step back and I look at my journey and some of the work that I've been involved in, I can see basically that it was collaboration interwoven with mentorship. So what I learned, I'm going to be super cliche. Keep learning and love doing it. Strive to move outside your comfort zone. My mentors were key for me. Just standing here today, their help has been instrumental. Collaboration is key to success on all levels. I would suggest to all students, researchers alike, to ask to take part in projects. Don't be scared to take part into projects. Ask questions. Ask to assist these open doors, opportunities that are invaluable. Mentorship can be found everywhere for yourself and others. No matter the amount of years of experience you may have, you can consider yourself a mentor. The RP community is small but mighty. It is invested in the future generation and is tightly knit through collaboration. And I can say that the ICRP is leading by example here. And so now I invite you to visit their website on the mentorship program to learn more, and as well as consider applying to future opportunities, but also share with your colleagues and students. So thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And we'll hold the questions. We have a 30-minute Q&A session at the end. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Sylvain Andreas. Sylvain has an initial background in nuclear engineering. He's working at the Nuclear Protection Evaluation Center in France as a senior researcher for the application of the optimization principle in different exposure situations. Sylvain has contributed to the foundation of the Young Generation Network of the International Radiation Protection Association in 2018, and he chairs that network today. His topic is How to Start a Network, Experience in Networking and Achievements of the IRPA Young Generation Network. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to talk about networking activities. So something quite different from the ICRP system and even science. So first, I would like to talk about the creation of the IRPA Young Generation Network in 2018. First, the official story. Just moving along. So the official story is that in 2017 and 2018, a group of young professionals in France and the United Kingdom that sent a survey intended for the young generation in radiation protection worldwide, with questions about the job, about initial training, about what do you wish from your employer, what do you wish from your national radiation protection society, how do you see the future of radiation protection, that sort of questions. In the survey, it went quite well. We received more than 250 feedback from young professionals in the world. And in the feedback, in the answer, it was really clear that an international young generation network was needed. So the foundation of the IRPA YGN, Young Generation Networks. and also all the data that have been collected, they were published in a journal, and they really helped in drafting the strategic agendas of IRPA-YGN and to guide the activities of the network. That was the official story. Now the unofficial story, something that has never been published, something that I think no one in this room knows. The unofficial story, it is in the comments that have been received at the occasion of the survey. You know, the comment box at the very end of the survey. And in this case, many people who answered the survey, they said that they found it difficult to understand, ambiguous, unclear. Ouch. Yeah, this was real comments. They all call for clarity. And the last bullet point, it was a guy, a Spanish one, he tried to make a joke between radiation protection and the word boring. Still, years after, I'm still quite not sure I get the joke, but clearly, if someone speaks Spanish, maybe he can explain it to me, but clearly, what is clear is that there is a motivation issue here. And there is another guy, that guy. He made a lot of comments. Again, he called for more clarity. He wished the purpose of the survey to be more clear, more apparent. Do I really need to do this? He asked. And another one, does this do anything good to anybody? So we are almost touching some ethical principles and values. And all these feedbacks, it's like, you know, the negative result in an experiment, you never publish them. But still, it's very valuable information. And at the IRPA-YGN, we do have the strategic agenda, we have the vision, the objectives. But these elements have been extremely important in the design and in the operation of the IRPA Young Generation Network. And the unofficial objectives of IRPA-YGN since the beginning have always been to be clear, to be motivating and engaging, and do not be too boring. Still, years after, I still remember the joke of this Spanish guy. Now, I would like to present some achievement of IRPA-YGN, not everything, just a glimpse, some of the highlights. 2019-2020, we ran a contest addressed to the national young generation networks, the young club, so to speak, in the National Societies of Radiation Protection. We sent them a contest and asking them to present themselves using just one slide. And that is the flyer we used for the contest. That's the feedback we received. And of course, the idea is not the slide itself. The idea was to push this young generation network to take a step back and think about what they are doing, how to present it to the others, and the others, they can see what the others do, take idea from that. That was the hidden objective of this activity, not the slide itself, of course. Then, in December 2019, a joint workshop of young generation networks was organized in Japan with technical visit, presentation of research results, and discussion on some tricky topics about how to engage the young generation in radiation protection. That was in December 2019, and just after that, COVID and lockdowns came, and of course, IRPA-YGN performed all its activities online. And the fact is that the IRPA-YGN never met for real, in the flesh, since the beginning. Anyway, we continue survey and contest. This was in 2021. It was a survey addressed to the young generation in radiation protection to know about the uses of social media and online learning, something never been investigated before. It was published. Then in 2021, and still running in 2022, we are running a movie contest, because everything is on Zoom now, so it's an opportunity to take a little revenge, make a movie contest. Topic is the benefit for young professionals to join and to stay in the National Radiation Protection Society. So it is one of the overriding issues is in IRPA YGN. That was the context, the results, now a little discussion. First, I would like to take a step back after some years in chairing the IRPA YGN. What is the assets of IRPA YGN, or in another way, what are the backbone of IRPA YGN? First, we do have the legitimacy and full support of IRPA, and in particular the IRPA Executive Committee, so that is one lesson. A young network should work with the adults. But in the same time, a young network should keep a young touch. So in our activities, we try to find some young aspect, young perspective in radiation protection topics. And we talk about social media, we talk about online learning, the impact of COVID pandemic on the young generation in radiation protection. We talk about artificial intelligence, innovation in radiation protection, that sort of young aspect. The network is growing, and today there are more than 20 people in the leadership committee of IRPA YGN, and the mailing list, it's like 200 young professionals in the mailing list, so we have gathered some firepower to say that we are representing the view of the young generation in radiation protection, and are recognized today as such by the ICRP, for example. Also, young network, it should, or any network, do not reinvent the wheel or the hot water, because we use the former experience of pre-established young generation networks, and in particular, the UK Rising Generation Group at the beginning. Yeah. Tool that works well: flyer, quick survey, contest, raffle. Website and blog, it does not work anymore to animate a network. Maybe it's too old-fashioned, or people have no time, I don't know, but it's not the best way to animate a network. Publication in peer-reviewed radiation protection journals are by far the most effective incentive I've seen in, to generate activities in a young network. That was the backbone. Now still some puzzling issues. First, some paradoxes. A critical size is needed for the network to represent the view of the young generation, but in the same time, the bigger the network and also the bigger the inertia of the network. It's becoming more difficult to get everyone informed, to make decisions. The network is less reactive, so there is a balance to find in the size of the network, maybe. Also, it's a good practice or good ambition to make everyone informed about the activities and asking for their suggestion in the activities, to drive asking for their suggestion. But it does not work in practice. I mean, people are not reading all their emails, and it should be clear that networking activities are the lowest of their priorities. So it's not working in practice. So how should we do that? I mean, the level of information, should the chair decide? Should the people decide? Should it be written? Is it becoming too complicated? I don't know. Animating a network in full remote setting, it has never been, I mean, the path is unfolding before us. Is it possible in the long term? I'm not talking about a task group with deadline. We are talking about a long-term sustainable network. A young network in radiation protection, it has several drawbacks. First, it's focused on radiation protection. And we should be very honest by saying that the capacities of attraction of radiation protection are limited, to put it mildly, for the new generation. It's like that. We should work, it's a fact, we should work like that, maybe not go against it, but use it, I don't know. But it's a fact. A young network is also young, meaning it is an open cycle network. People will come in, they will stay a few years, and then they will quit because they will be too old, and then there's the network definition. And how to keep the interest of young professionals, how to keep the momentum of activities with such a turnover, complicated. Also, some requirements to animate such a network: time, and we should be also very honest, and people engaged in networking activities in the room know that even after the application of the optimization principle, there is still a fair amount of time needed to animate such a network. A budget might help, and I think there are some IRPA exec in the room. It's the opportunity to thank them to have provided a budget to the IRPA YGN to ensure its activities. Communication and social engineering skills in English are a bonus, but not part of the initial training. And understanding and support from the management are essential. And in my case, the management and my bosses, they always understand what I was doing in ICRP, the meaning of it, and they were always very supportive, but it's a chance that not every young people have. So I hope this presentation met the objective of ICRP. I hope it was clear, motivating, and engaging, and not too boring. Hope. And this presentation, of course, it would not have been possible without the current and the former leadership committee members, because all the flyers, the presentation, this article would not have been possible without them. So I thank them deeply, and I thank you, public, for listening to me.
Okay, thank you very much, Sylvain. We'll move on to our next speaker, who is Lauren Faulkner. She'll be giving a talk titled Engaging Young Professionals, a Canadian Perspective. So Lauren is the RSO at BC Cancer right here in Vancouver. She has a BSc and is a registered nuclear medicine technologist. Recently, she developed and implemented a radioactive waste management database at the cyclotron facility here at BC Cancer, which removed the need for paper records and helped streamline record management for staff. So take it away, Lauren.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name's Lauren. I'm a member of the Young Professional Network here in Canada, so that's with the CRPA. I'm going to be talking to you today about how to engage young professionals in the workplace and how they can be more welcome or feel more welcome. To get started, I wanted to give a definition of what a young professional is, because there's a lot of different definitions out there. Some places say less than 35 years old, less than 40 years old, but I think that it's important to consider the field that we're in. So I use the ICRP's definition, which is students or professionals working within the first 10 years of their career in the field of radiation protection or its allied fields. I really like this because radiation protection can take a bit of time to get into, and it's important to take that into consideration when we're defining this. Now, why are we talking about young professionals? Well, there's a lot of us, and we have a lot of stuff that we can bring to your department or your team. A lot of young professionals are very enthusiastic. They're eager to learn. They have a mindset that is, they've just come out of school, so they're still keen in absorbing information and want to learn new things. They bring in new ways of thinking and can provide different perspectives to problems that you may be having. They also bring in a lot of new technical skills that they may have acquired through school, or just growing up with technology makes you a lot more adept with it. And they also have a better understanding of their own generation. So, for example, if you had, I worked in nuclear medicine, so if you had some nurses that you needed to train, some new nurses, and they were working with radioactive patients, you may want to have a young professional be the person to deliver this training, because they can actually they can communicate better with them, and yeah. So the young professionals also face a lot of challenges when trying to get into this field. Lack of experience is a big one, because it's hard to get experience working with radiation without working somewhere that has radiation. So this can make it difficult finding employment in your field and also advancing your career. So for myself, like I said, I have a nuclear medicine background. So if I wanted to move into something more related to like LINACs or radiation therapy, I don't have a physics background, and that makes it harder for me to move into and advance my career. As Julie mentioned in hers, having young families can also be a challenge when moving into this field, and obviously economic challenges. So here in Vancouver, the cost of living is very high, and the vacancy rates for rentals is quite low, so it makes it really hard to find a affordable place to live. So it makes it hard for people to stay here and move into these careers. And this is the same across many other major cities in Canada, and I'm sure in other places as well. So the best thing that you can do to help these young professionals is through mentoring. I myself have benefited from mentoring over the years. I wouldn't be where I am without the people that have helped me and supported me over the years. They may not realize that they've helped me, but they have, and it has been very useful. A mentor can be anybody, so it can be a coworker, a supervisor, could even be somebody you meet at this conference this week. And it's really simple to be a mentor. You can invite them out for coffee and get to know them. You can include them on emails or meetings that they may not normally be involved with, and let them know of any upcoming training or events that may be of interest to them. Some more involved things you can do to engage young professionals is to invite them to participate in projects or have them give presentations that you would normally give. For example, I was asked by one of my mentors to help with a CNSC license application. This gave me a chance to see the licensing process and help build experience to acquire my current position. For him, it was also very helpful because he didn't have to worry about it, so I'm sure he appreciated that. Another great suggestion that came up from one of the young professional network members was to do virtual network tours. So this young professional was introduced to everyone in their network and given 20 to 30 minutes with each person to sit down either in person or virtually and discuss what they do. And this was a great way for them to find out what everybody's background was and also make connections and become familiar with the people they work with. I'm on the wrong page. There we go. As an employer, there are a lot of ways that you can support young professionals, and one of the big ones is providing training opportunities, either through conferences or supporting them with funding to take extra certifications. Establishing mentoring programs is great too, and one that has helped me is supporting somebody's career progression. So my supervisor asked me where I wanted to go with my career, and he was able to provide me with resources on how to move in that direction and connected me with people that could provide more information on that direction. And he also supported me by allowing me time to meet with these people and see what they do. Another important thing is making sure that we provide a good work-life balance, because as I mentioned before, a lot of young professionals have young families that they have, or they're starting a family. And being able to provide and accommodations for this is really helpful. This could be, the pandemic was really helpful for this, so providing virtual work options, maybe adjusting work days so that they can bring their kids to daycare and then come in. There's lots of options out there, but providing them is really useful. Now, for the young professionals that are out there today, I want you to remember that a mentor-mentee relationship is not a one-way relationship. You both can benefit from it, and making these relationships is not just about advancing your career. This is the field you want to work in, so enjoy it. Build relationships, reach out to your colleagues, have fun. Lots of ways that you can connect with your colleagues are go to social events, turn your Zoom camera on. I know it's scary, or nobody wants to do that anymore, but turning your Zoom camera on is a really great way to show your face. Make sure you're asking questions, because nobody expects you to know everything. You are still new to the profession, and remember, there's no such thing as a dumb question. And finally, you may have started on your career path, but don't forget to look out for others who are just starting. Volunteer to introduce a new staff member to your team, or reach out to a local school to provide a tour of your facility or lab. So as I mentioned, I am part of the CRPA Young Professional Network. We are a talented and diverse group of professionals and a great resource for any young professionals in this field. We have a vast list of resources and network contacts. We have virtual meetings, social events. We provide the opportunity to do study groups for certifications, and we also have a list of possible certifications and courses that you could take in the future. So it's a really great resource for anybody that is interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Our next speaker is Anthony DeVella. Tony is currently the Radiation Safety Officer for Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana. He obtained his master's degree in medical physics and health physics with a concentration in health physics from the Louisiana State University in 2019. He's already passed part 1 of the Certified Health Physicist exam in 2021, and he's passionate about the intersection of radiological protection and veterinary medicine, and about engaging young radiological protection professionals. His talk is Contributing as a Mentee, Diverse Operational Environments Within Veterinary Practice and Their Challenges for Radiological Protection.
Thank you for that introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tony. I'm a mentee for Task Group 110. This is my very first ICRP, and I'm excited to be here talking to you all. So just a quick overview of my presentation today. I'm going to talk about how I learned about the ICRP and got involved with the mentorship program. I'll talk a little bit about my task group, 110, Radiological Protection and Veterinary Practice. I'll discuss briefly the upcoming publication and how I was able to contribute to that, as well as some work kind of going beyond that and future work. So I first learned about the ICRP in my graduate studies. It went a little something like this. I was taught that the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation, they're the scientific body that looks at the epidemiological and radiological studies, which the ICRP then takes to issue their recommendations, and then the International Atomic Energy Agency will use that to set international standards, which individual countries then modify for their own needs. In addition to learning about the ICRP, during my master's program was when I first became interested in radiological protection for animals, specifically veterinary patients. For my master's thesis, I was looking at dose rates in cats who had received iodine-131 therapy. There hadn't been a lot of work done regarding release of these feline patients. And so I went to the annual Health Physics Society meeting to give a presentation on my thesis. And that same year, there was a ICRP special session where my mentor, Dr. Nicole Martinez, was given a talk regarding reasonable radiation protection in non-human biota. I thought it was really neat that there was somebody else kind of looking at some of the same topics that I was looking at. And so after her presentation, I decided to just chat her up. She told me how the ICRP had an upcoming mentorship program, and she invited me to apply. And the application process was super simple and straightforward. All I had to do was submit my CV, my letter of intent, and a letter of support from my organization. And just a little side note, Dr. Kuhl, who kind of oversees the mentorship program and has put together a few meetings with all the mentees, also gave a presentation at this Health Physics Society conference. So I applied to the mentorship program, and I eventually joined Task Group 110, Radiological Protection and Veterinary Practice, which was mandated to advise the main commission on aspects in veterinary medicine involving the use of ionizing radiation. Veterinarians were some of the early adopters of radiography. They saw its benefits right away. Here you can see a rat radiograph dating back to 1896. And for much of its history, radiographs was a lot of the work that was being done involving ionizing radiation. But as Rachel mentioned in her talk in the previous session, briefly, applications have expanded and diversified, and the frequency has also increased. It's not uncommon to find places that offer feline 131 therapy for hyperthyroidism, or even equine nuclear scintigraphy. And so with these applications come some additional concerns. In nuclear medicine applications, you can have environmental contamination to think about. But one thing that the task group wanted to focus on was also just giving explicit attention to the animal's exposure. One of the things that has been most enlightening for me being a mentee for the task group is seeing how basically an ICRP publication gets published. And so I'll kind of briefly go over the TG 110 timeline for publication. The task group was first formed in April of 2021. I joined 2 years later in April 2020. At that time, the task group had already had their first meeting and finalized writing assignments. So my main task was to review our references and kind of add in or adjust as needed, and also taking into consideration, ethical judgments and ethical values. And so shortly after I joined, a draft of the report was ready. We held a virtual meeting over Zoom in September of 2020 to discuss the draft. And then shortly thereafter, we had a mature draft, which we submitted to Committees 3 and Committees 4 for their review. Another thing I really appreciated being in the mentorship program was learning about the 4 different committees of the ICRP, as that was something I had not previously known about. And so after we got feedback from the committees, their chairs, and even the main commission, we started consulting with professional societies, such as the American Veterinary Medical Association, the American Veterinary College of Radiology, and the European College of Diagnostic Imaging, to name a few. After consulting with them, we sent it back over to the main commission, where they reviewed it and approved it for public consultation, which officially opened in December 2021. It was open for a few months, and then we spent another few months kind of resolving the comments we received. And I'm excited to say that the publication was approved for publication in September, just a couple months ago. And so the main aim of the report is to provide a broad audience a general overview of some of the issues and complications in veterinary medicine regarding uses of ionizing radiation. As I mentioned, uses have greatly expanded and diversified. And one of the things the task group wanted to look at is explicitly the animal's exposure. Dr. Pentreath kind of talked about that in his presentation earlier. And in a lot of ways, veterinary medicine applications can be comparable to equivalent human medicine applications, and therefore the system of protection should be similar, and we should utilize the protection principles of justification, optimization, and dose limits. My main contribution to the report was the Roles and Responsibilities Appendix, where I discussed the responsibility of a veterinary hospital or clinic to make sure its facility is fit for purpose, that the rooms and buildings and equipment are all suited for the procedures that they're going to be doing, as well as having a proper quality assurance program in place. A radiological practitioner who will generally be a veterinarian who may or may not be specialized in radiology or nuclear medicine. they're responsible for the appropriateness of a procedure. So they're tasked with applying the justification principle. And they're also responsible for overseeing how the procedure is performed. And so with that, they're responsible for staff exposure. Staff need to be properly trained and educated in the procedures they're working in. But they'll also be responsible for any non-staff or public exposures, as lay people are often used to assist in procedures. And it's important for them to be properly informed and instructed. And of course, veterinary training programs have the responsibility to properly educate and train veterinary professionals in the radiological protection aspects of the various modalities and therapies that they'll be utilizing. And in addition to working on the report together, Nicole and I have monthly Zoom meetings where we're working on this short paper regarding operational environments within veterinary practice. Veterinarians see a lot of diversity in their work, of course in species, you know, where they see cats, dogs, horses, elephants, basically any species that isn't human, veterinarians take care of it. And they also face a diversity in hazards. You know, radiological hazards is just one among many. And they have to work in diverse environments. In human medicine, a lot of the applications will always take place in a clinical setting, but that's not always true in veterinary medicine. Sometimes veterinarians have to go out into the field. They'll have to go to a farm, a stable, an even more exotic location where there's not a controlled area. And so that introduces some challenges. And of course, there's always more work to be done. You've heard it a lot today, but education and training is always going to be important. Looking at, you know, the benefits versus the drawbacks of using lay people is another interesting question. And as well as possibly introducing the concept of a comforter or carer for an animal patient. For those who aren't familiar with that concept, in human medicine, a comforter or carer receives a special dose limit that's higher than the public dose limit, so that they can take care of a loved one who's undergone a nuclear medicine procedure. And of course, with that, we have to consider the release of the animal patient after a nuclear medicine procedure. And if we're going to be explicitly addressing an individual animal's exposure, it raises questions about service or support animals. If their handler has to receive a nuclear medicine therapy or radiation therapy, what does that mean for the support animal and their interaction with that support animal? And similarly for laboratory animals, if we're going to be addressing their exposure, how exactly does that fit into the system of protection? And so I just want to end by saying that my experience with the mentorship program and the ICRP as a whole has been very positive. And I encourage any other early career professionals out there, if someone's given a talk regarding something you're interested in, chat them up. You know, you could, it's a great networking opportunity. Worst case scenario, they may not have anything at the moment for you, but when something pops up, you know, you might be you know, at the forefront of their mind. And so I just leave you with this photo from our virtual meeting back in September of 2020, where a couple of us are holding up the animals that inspire and motivate us to do this work. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you very much, Tony. And then last but not least, you can't really have a conversation about young professionals without getting the student perspective. So we have Marta Kotsemba, who is a fourth-year nuclear engineering PhD student at Ontario Tech University. She holds a BSc in health physics and radiation science, as well as a Master of Applied Science in nuclear engineering, all from Ontario Tech University. Her research interests include radiation effects on the eye lens and on non-human biota. And her talk today is titled Perspectives from a First-Generation Grad Student and Researcher in Canada, Surprises, Obstacles, and Other Considerations. So Here's Marta.
Hi, everyone. My name is Marta Kotsemba, and as you just heard, I'm a fourth-year PhD student at Ontario Tech University. Some of you may remember that as the University of Ontario Institute of Technology. And I'm just going to talk about a few of the sort of interesting, surprising things I've come across as a first-generation graduate student in Canada. So just to get everyone on the same page here, what is a first-generation graduate student? In academia, when we talk about first-generation students, that generally means someone who's in university whose parents have not been to university. In a first-generation graduate student, that does not mean a graduate student whose parents have not been to graduate school, but whose parents have not been to university at all, even for a bachelor's degree or a four-year program. So just a little bit about myself and why I'm qualified to speak on this matter. My parents are from Poland. My dad left school right after high school. There he is. He actually went to so it was popular in Poland at the time, like a boarding sports school for high-performance athletes, kids, really, youth, who were basically able to train full-time for their sport and kind of get a high school diploma on the side. So the academics were not the focus at these schools, so let me just say that. So that's what he did, and he did not pursue any further education after that. My mom did attend a two-year midwifery diploma program, also in Poland. Followed that up by opening a pizza shop with her schoolmates, her fellow midwives. So also did not really stay in the field. The pizza shop thing worked out, though, because that's where she met my dad. And the rest is history, as they say. So they met, married, and moved from Poland to Canada basically all in the same year. They were very young, basically right after finishing school. My dad was 18. He needed a handwritten permission letter from his parents to get married at that age. My mom was 22. So they were living in martial law Poland at the time and moved to Canada to get away from that. I was born the next year, so that's I'm first generation in both senses. First generation in Canada, and as you can see, first generation going to university. So I had a very typical immigrant kid school life. I didn't speak English till I went to school. My parents obviously struggled more than I did. They were adults at the time. Spent a lot of my childhood kind of translating life for them. When it came time to going to university, as I was sort of getting to the end of high school, university was obviously something that interested me a lot. I was very academically minded, unlike my parents. It really interested me. But it was really difficult. There were a lot of things that I had no idea about, and my parents could provide no help with because they did not go to university, and whatever they were familiar with in the sort of academic setting, it was from a very different place, a very different time. So things like what schools are good in our area, in our country, what kinds of programs, majors, minors, what is that? And the differences between large schools and small schools, large programs and small programs. So I kind of tried to figure it out the best I could and ended up making the wrong decision. I chose a big school, a big program, thinking that's what would give me what I wanted out of university. It was very much the opposite. After 1 year, I transferred to a much smaller school, a much smaller program. So that was the Bachelor of Science in Health Physics and Radiation Science at Ontario Tech University. Finished that and racked up some $30,000 of student debt, which, again, shocked my parents coming from a place where you did not have to pay to go to universities. So after the undergraduate degree, of course, is the question of what comes next. My first concern, obviously, was this debt, and I thought, yeah, okay, well, I obviously have to go get a job. $30,000 in debt after a bachelor's degree is better than $50,000 in debt from if I want to pursue a master's. Lucky for me, we have this that small program at Ontario Tech University, and that included a fourth-year thesis project, which is one-on-one research with a faculty member. I was very lucky to be able to work under Dr. Tony Waker, who I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that name. I'm still working with him today as I'm finishing my PhD. He's been just wonderful. And he, in my undergrad, was offering this fourth-year thesis project about dissecting fish eyeballs. So, I could not understand why no one had jumped on this in the years before. So I took that project, it went pretty well. Tony asked if I was considering grad school, and after a very confusing conversation, it came out that, in Canada, you can get paid to be a grad student, and this obviously changed my whole perspective of the situation. I ended up pursuing the master's, finished that, and I'm about to finish a PhD. So, and the only reason for that was because this happened to come up. Tony happened to ask me if this is something I was wanting to do, and cleared up this misconception. And I hear this from a lot of my peers here in Canada, where you pay to go to university as an undergraduate, but you can get paid to be a graduate student. So this is one of those misconceptions. So there's that first problem of can I go to grad school in the first place? Once you get there, there's a whole lot more that you have to learn on how to sort of fit in this new world. Even things like, if I want to go to a conference to present my work, do I pay for that myself? Do I pay for my food? Do I pay for my travel? Things that are very obvious to those of us who come from this sort of world, or maybe whose parents are in this sort of world, or were when we were entering this world. But these things are not obvious for people who have no connection to the academic life at all. These things come up pretty easily when you have like a shared grad student office or a student lounge, and that's how I got a lot of my sort of questions and misconceptions answered when I was a brand new master's student. That changed, of course, with COVID. And I mean, at least at my school, and I know that at some of my friends' schools, it has, COVID we are apparently moving on from that, but things are not really the same. We do not have really this sort of casual shared space where these topics come up organically and are addressed by your senior students, basically. Of course, you can facilitate these conversations, and I have certainly been asked as a more experienced graduate student these days to sit down and have a conversation with the incoming grad students and sort of bring up some of these things that they might not know, orient them a little bit. So, that works. That works just fine, but someone does have to facilitate that. Whether it is the supervisor, sort of like the research supervisor, or whether it is something like student services or something, someone has to sort of make those connections between the more experienced and the new. That was reflected a lot in all of these networking type conversations as well that we just heard about. Of course, that is helpful for the students who have made it to grad school and does nothing for those who are in that earlier stage of, can I even afford to go to grad school? Is this something that is in the cards for me? So just as I'm kind of wrapping up here, I'm not trying to propose any reworking of the system here. I am just trying to point out a few of the obstacles or surprises or just things that are problems for incoming first-generation graduate students who don't know anyone in that sort of setting. A lot of supervisors simply don't know that the incoming students don't know these things. So if this is something that you're aware of is kind of a problem, it is a little bit easier to address those things. And I want to point out that this is not really just about academia, right? We have grad students who go on to join industry, join a lot of the companies that a lot of us here work for today. So this is a big pool, basically, and there was one of the focuses in the welcome address about training opportunities at universities for undergraduate and graduate students, and this is one of those things that might basically coming into play. We need more educated young people in graduate programs to feed into industry, and this is one of the sort of roadblocks that we might be not realizing we are facing. And of course, first-generation students are an important pool. They make up a large proportion of undergrads, and therefore a large proportion of the students that we're trying to draw from for the more specialized programs. They should not be facing these unintentional obstacles. No one should be, obviously. So the more we realize we might be introducing these obstacles, the more we can handle them. And I'll just leave up this slide for a moment about some of the very common things I hear from first-generation students who are in grad school now, sort of questions that are easily addressed if you know other people in that sort of field, but that you really have no idea about otherwise. So thank you so much for listening. That concludes my talk.
Thank you so much, Marta. I think we've all gained some perspective from your experiences. Now is time. We have 30 minutes almost, a little less, but not. We still have about 25 minutes for questions. I'll invite anyone in the audience to come to the microphones. While you're doing that, I think Omar and I have some starter questions. Do you want to lead off?
Sure. Yeah, so actually, this is a perfect segue from Marta's talk would be, Marta, you mentioned how you kind of came across grad studies just as it got brought up in conversation. Me personally, I found out about radiation protection, health physics, all that stuff also just by chance. So I guess the question to everyone is, what's the best strategy to kind of make sure that these kind of things don't just come up by chance in a very small percentage of the population, but that a lot of people know about radiation protection and that they know what kind of opportunities are available in this field?
I don't know. Okay, that seems to be okay. That's a very difficult question, Omar. I mean, I certainly was one of those, like when I first went to university, it was for just biology, not knowing that health physics as a field existed and radiation protection as a field existed. Once I learned that, it was very, my interests were always in biology and physics, and I thought kind of I had to choose between those, but once I discovered radiation protection and health physics, that's a very clear intersection of the topics that interested me the most, and I was pretty shocked that I had never come across it before, because here I was thinking, I've looked into different fields, I've looked at my opportunities, and this has never kind of come across for me. But I feel like it has to come from several different areas. I don't think that, any one area, any one university promoting their program, for example, I don't think that is going to be very helpful. We kind of need more dissemination to the public from all these different areas. Universities are one thing, but we have a lot of nuclear power in Canada, and especially in Ontario, where I am from. And we need a little bit more public involvement, I think, from the industry and especially from the big players in the industry, so that kids going into high school, for instance, or high school aged people trying to choose university programs, they're simply more aware of these are some of the areas that I can work in. Everyone knows, you can be an engineer, you can be a doctor, you can be whatever, and that is from kind of what they see in the world around them. So I think it really has to come from a bunch of different areas rather than any one area. That's kind of my main takeaway here.
And so thank you, Marta, for that. And I think someone in the earlier talks, they mentioned how nuclear in recent years has kind of gotten a nice, more positive PR than originally, and then usually it does. So how can kind of tying into what you answered just now, and then also tying into that previous point, how can we sort of use radiation protection, like as you say, we want to kind of reach a more general audience, the general public, and especially young people. So what specifically could be used as a strategy to really kind of ride on the wave of this positive press and sort of make sure RP is something that more and more people know about, and more and more young people are interested in? This is open to everybody, by the way.
I have some initial thoughts, so I'll just throw them out there first. I know that I was exposed to a lot of new areas in high school when we had various companies and universities coming to do presentations to us about, this is who we are. You may not know about us, but we certainly, we exist in your community, basically, and we are here as an option. This is what we do, and if you're interested in these sorts of topics, this is something you could consider. So that seems to me like a very easy first step, and that can be by any one company. We had local companies, we had very large companies coming to do these presentations. We also had university faculties and programs coming as well. So it seems like a very easy first step to make that connection there.
Great. I'm one of the older guys, and
No, you're not.
I retired. I was going to retire 2 years ago, but the pandemic slowed that down. I think there are a lot of people like me that are either have just retired or are on the verge. That's going to leave a huge void in our profession. We've been talking about it for years. We've got some Gen Zs coming along, and how are we going to attract them to our profession? What are some of the elevator speeches and other ideas that I know, Sylvain, you mentioned some opportunities for getting people that are already in the profession engaged and excited, but I wanted to invite the panel, as well as any younger professionals in the room, to share your ideas with the rest of us for solving this, what in the U.S. at least they were calling a human capital crisis. So, thanks. Anyone? Please come to the mic or from the...
Hi, Mike. Mario again.
Yeah, Mario.
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Actually, you probably know Ted Lasso quite a bit. I asked that exact same question to him. How can we actually attract people into the program? It's really hard to do, I think. And I'm one of the younger professionals as well. One of the ideas that I've always had, and from the university's perspective, how do we go into like high schools and show what a nuclear engineer does or what RP does? Not necessarily at the university level, but at the high school level or middle school level. An example for chemistry is great. You go to your high school, you have milk and chocolate, you mix it, that's it, that's a reaction. How do we do that in radiation protection? I've always think about this. I know, for example, Berkeley, the University of Berkeley in the US, they're trying to visualize radiation. They're at least trying to develop an approach to do that. But I think it's a very, very hard question. I'm really curious to know what the panel is going to comment on that. Definitely something that I think they should have some insights.
Can I?
Thank you. Yes, Julie.
Just to add to your response, I think it was, I keep forgetting what year the CRPA conference was last, so 2018, 2019 in Ottawa. But we held an event for students in grade 6, and we had several activities designed for them to be interactive. And one, I think that, like, I think probably most of you have seen, but like a cloud chamber, that is really cool to kids. It's cool to adults. I think it's cool. So there's a lot of activities out there, and I didn't come out with these. These have been used for a while, but it's just getting to talk to the ones who engage with kids on a regular basis. Seek those people out, and they probably have the tools for you to make things more interesting. And also meet them where they are. I have an 11-year-old, and I keep telling her to get off TikTok. So obviously using the tools that they are using every day.
Thank you, Julie. Borislava?
No, thank you very much. Can you hear me? It's working. Yeah, I would like just to use the opportunity, because you're talking about how we, the international organizations, can give opportunities to the young ones. I just want to share at least 3 mechanisms that UNSCARE uses at the moment, and I'm talking about UNSCARE Secretariat. Just an opportunity to disseminate that. I'm sure maybe some of you already know. The first one is that every year we announce internships. They are UN internships up to 6 months. At the moment they are not paid, but at least this provides an opportunity for young professionals to, I would say yes, they're graduates at the last year of the high-level education or the 1 year after. And they work with experts, with our experts, similar like what you work in the task groups. And it gives an opportunity to work with experts, learn from them, and also learn about the UN in general. And then we have a small joke that either after the internship, people either get a job or get married. So one of the others, we even keep the statistics about this. But so far, for the last 3 years, I see only positive results, that the young people then after that mostly get jobs, and a few of them also get married as well. The second option I want just to share with you is in-kind experts work also with us at the Secretariat. And at least for the moment, we have 2 colleagues from CNSC and also one from Health Canada, or there were 2, sorry, even in total in the last 3 years, 4 colleagues who are working online because of the COVID. And this is, of course, with the support of the employers. And this also gives the opportunity to go in depth. In the past, it would be also up to 1 year as well. 1 to 3 years, you could come and work with us, of course, nominated by your organizations and representatives. And the third one is I would like to encourage young people also to get involved in the scientific evaluations, and this is to be done through the nomination of representatives. The list of representatives are on our website, and I would encourage you, we have a new website, unscare.org. So the nominations come through your representatives. At the moment, this is actually the chair of UNSCARE, Dr. Jing Cheng. So I would just encourage you to do that. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a question over there as well.
Yes, my name is Nabil Musa again from Canadian Nuclear Laboratories. Still like to think of myself as somewhat of a young professional. So my comment is about how can we invigorate the interest of younger students, high school students, and just in general, just the younger population in nuclear energy. And one perspective, and I'll lead that into a question, is having more discussions of what's very important for the younger generation at this day. And from my contact and given my experience in another industry, as I've seen RP in oil and gas and non-renewables, and then now in CNL in the science and technology, decommissioning, environmental stewardship. It's how nuclear can play that security role in our clean energy future. And also a big thing on the younger generation's mind is the energy security. And we know the environment, the energy security situation around the world, and specifically what's going on in Europe. So my question is, how much of that perspective is the young generation in nuclear and other associations are engaging in those topics? In CNL, I know there's a lot of initiatives to kind of educate the schools and the communities around us about how nuclear can play a vital role in Canada's clean energy future. And I've seen some positive results from my circles, and I pose that question now. So thank you, and excuse me for the longer comment.
Anyone want to read it?
I think I would just add, so I work for the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. As a regulator, we don't promote nuclear. So it's more about providing information so people can make their own decisions. And I think I can leave it at that.
Maybe I can add that national radiation protection societies have a role to play, and depending on the context of the country and the regulatory context also, and activities, SMR or no SMR, play on that. There are a lot of, I mean, the United Kingdom, they have a long, well-established experience in career fair engagement, and that's the sort of thing that IRPA is really, sorry to play on, to take that up, but IRPA is really engaged in many activities to connect young generation with the more experienced professionals.
Bernard?
Yeah, it's quite related to your comment, Sylvain. I know quite well Sylvain because we have a around monthly meeting together. And my question is about this. You remember the John Fitzgerald Kennedy comment, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. So now, my proposal, I like very much the question raised by Nicole this afternoon in one word. Have you a proposal? Because up to now, we have discussed what we can do for you, but now, what can you do for ICRP or for IRPA? Have you a proposal? Have you an initiative? Have you a criticism? Well, in few words, from your point of view, what can you bring to ICRP, or what would you like to change? Mm-hmm.
The tables have turned. Yeah, and as this, as proposed, maybe one word
question,
or
yeah.
as short as you want. Yeah.
I'd add trust.
I'll also add technology skills.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would add active engagement with other young people.
And I probably would say fresh ideas, new perspectives.
Yeah. I believe about that, yeah. For example, when we decided with Sylvain to work on social media, I say, well, you are better than me to work on this field, probably. And so fresh idea, definitively. Sylvain?
In one word?
No, one sentence. I know quite you well.
Yeah. I think it will maybe more time. Time is even becoming shorter this day with everything. I think more time will be needed for the young professional to engage deeper in every time.
Okay. Great question, thank you. And we've got one more over here.
Hi, Derek Yokish. I'm at Francis Marion University, where we have an undergraduate radiation protection program. I was going to answer Mike's question, throw in a couple of thoughts. We've had some success with recruiting students into our program in the past. It's been hard lately, though. We're getting our tails kicked by things like mechanical engineering. I know that's hard for this room to believe why anyone would want to be a mechanical engineer instead of a radiation protection professional. But here's a couple of thoughts on things that have worked for us in the past and maybe some reasons why we're losing, at least in my neck of the woods, to engineering disciplines right now. Internships are fantastic. They need to be paid, not because this generation is only caring about the money. They absolutely do not. That's just kind of a prerequisite. My sense is this generation is very much interested in the quality of the career that they see. And so maybe the most important part of internships we found over the years is the quality of that mentorship they receive once they go. We've had outstanding internships where the students come back and they spread the word, and one internship leads to like 5 new students in the discipline. We've also had the opposite occur, where one student goes off to an internship, has a very negative experience, and now all of a sudden, you know, what the PhD professor says really doesn't matter because they've got this real world experience that tells them otherwise. So that's one point. The second point I would make, I'm going to echo something that Marta said that struck me, that it's not going to be about any one educational institution, I think, providing the solution here. One of the things I know I would love to have help with are materials that I can use to help recruit students into the discipline. It's very difficult for me in an academic institution to produce those kinds of materials. And yes, those materials should be designed to speak to this target audience. You don't really want me producing TikTok videos that they're just not going to be a very efficient use of funds. But I do think there's a role for professional societies to play and for government agencies to play in producing those kinds of materials and helping get the word out about how fantastic this career can be and how desperate we are for folks. Thank you.
Sure. So it's great to see young professionals presenting at these conferences, but I do wish that there were more students in the crowd and younger professionals to present these inspiring talks to and inspire them to take on these initiatives and empower them as well. So in relation to that, what do you see as obstacles in getting the most out of these types of events and in terms of attending these events as well?
I would say, you know, the cost, affordability, and as Marta kind of mentioned, you know, the unintended obstacle of students not knowing that there is, for example, funding maybe from some other organization that, you know, will sponsor you to go to a conference, or, you know, some conferences often will pay for a student's travel. And so just kind of working with universities and other organizations to make sure that that's well advertised so students aren't in the dark about those opportunities.
Is it on? Okay. I'd also add that being actually aware of these conferences, because when the first conference that I came to a few years ago, I didn't know about it, just an instructor told me about it offhand. So sharing this information with people you know or who are younger, even if you don't think they may be interested, is, you know, sharing it to them because maybe they are and they just haven't mentioned it. Getting the information out there.
I would add, I'm not sure what the ICRP or the CRPA does, but preemptively with these conferences, reaching out to universities, local schools at least, and maybe so sessions like these are important to share experiences, but maybe having a session focused on them, so giving them maybe a crash course if they're not aware of nuclear and radiation protection.
And I guess in response to the second question about being at the actual conference. Are there things that could be improved in terms of networking for younger professionals? Or I guess you mentioned one of the things, but do you find it easy to network with individuals, or do you have your own social circle? Do you think it would be difficult for somebody who may not have a network coming to one of these conferences?
I think that whatever the decision about involving young professionals, the adults should also be in the room, not the young professional networking in one room. That will defeat the purpose. So I think whatever the activities or initiative, it should be with the more experienced people of ICRP, not a standalone thing.
Thank you for that question. Could you let us know who you are? I did,
sorry. I'm Christy Randawa. I'm with the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission.
Oh, thank you. I think Peter on the right was next, right?
Hello, everyone. So, Pete Bryant. I'm Head of Environment and Radiation Safety in EDF's new nuclear build projects in the UK. But I was also former president of the Society for Radiological Protection in the UK, which is the second largest radiation protection professional body globally, I think, still, maybe. So we did a lot of work looking at trying to attract people into radiation protection. So since 2013, we launched a schools event. We roughly reached out to about 80,000 kids per year, every year. We had funding routes available so that students can apply to go to the conference. It would be paid for, all expenses paid. We would invest in scholarships. We had various other initiatives. Obviously, the question was asked around actual material to give to kids. We have lesson plans for teachers that all went out. We did all that, and still we face that same problem. And what I'd say is the one central problem this profession has is actually something we heard a lot about this morning, communication. And that's not only about communication of a system of protection, it's how do we communicate to the younger generation, to those who are working in other professions who could be reskilled to work in radiation protection as well. And if you look at how communication has changed over time, a lot of the old mechanisms that we use, and even things like the schools outreach events, which are great, you're only reaching a real small proportion of the children. And actually often the case, you're reaching those from a more privileged background, because those that come from less privileged backgrounds can't afford to go to the big science fairs or the big events like that. They just don't have access to it. But listening to some of the points being raised earlier, and I love the point around innovation being one of the things, or new perspectives being brought out to the profession. Things like social media, things like TikTok. How people communicate nowadays is, can you communicate this in 10 seconds? If you can't communicate in 10 seconds, you've lost my interest. So that's what we need to start targeting, innovative ways of communicating. I'm not on TikTok, don't ever ask me to do anything like that. But with the younger generation here, there's a real opportunity to engage and use those mechanisms. And so what I'd say is, help get those message out there. That's something that you could bring back to the actual radiation protection community, is use those skills to reach out, to get out to the larger audiences and find a way of communicating radiation protection in 10 seconds.
Great. Thank you, Pete. I think we have time for our final question over here.
Thanks. Gillian Hirth from the Australian Radiation Protection and Nuclear Safety Agency. I would just like to say thank you to all of the panel members for your stories and your experiences. I've certainly taken a few things out of it, be that looking at first generation people as a cohort to be tapped. Reaching out to schools is an issue. Flexibility in the workplace, as the relatively new CEO of Arpanza, that's certainly one thing post-pandemic. Making sure that we're we're a place that people want to work, and they want to work there for a range of reasons. So continue to share your stories, because I think it's really important. One of the other points that I want to pick up on was what's young professional, and if you're not a young professional, you're an old professional. Are you me? I don't consider myself young or old yet, so what am I? And reflecting on, Arpanza has a Radiation Health and Safety Advisory Council, and we met last week, I think, and One of the members of the council is the current president of the Women in Nuclear. And we'll be talking about how you bring people into radiation protection, because workforce is an issue in Australia, but it's an issue globally. And one of the suggested cohorts is actually mid-career people who have STEM degrees, who have left STEM and are not working in STEM anymore, who might be encouraged to work in RP environments, do a bit of retraining, but we actually potentially have a really untapped cohort there. And so I think you're sharing your lessons as you maybe move towards that mid-career of saying, well, you know, things have changed, because there may be this cohort that is not encouraging their children to go into science because of their experiences. I know it's been really important for me to share my experience. You know, I have two children, a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old, and it's not always easy, but having flexibility in being able to juggle all of the things in life is really important. So continue to share your stories and continue to think about all of those different cohorts as you go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Gillian. We're out of time, but I wanted to tell Derek and Pete, I'm not looking at TikTok. What I'm looking at is the ICRP digital app, and I hope you all have that on your phones now. And that tells me that we're back in this room tomorrow morning at 8:45 for Bob McDonnell's keynote. And Chris, is there anything else you want to tell the group tonight, except have a nice evening? Come back tomorrow. Omar, thank you. Do you have any final words?
Yeah, I think the final takeaway from all this is there's a lot of problems. There's the human capital issue you mentioned as well. And I think maybe TikTok, an aggressive TikTok campaign could be the issue, or it could be a horrible idea. I don't know. But maybe the next TG could be a, implementation of TikTok awareness. I don't know. We'll see. So thank you to our panelists. Thank you very much.